All right, so what's up, guys? For tonight's performance talk, we want to hit on the topic of working out versus training. Um, a lot of people finding their entryway into fitness in general might think these two words are interchangeable, but in fact, they're actually not. So, working out, we're kind of talking about like random wads here, kind of just doing a workout off the cuff, or even doing the same exact workout day in day out for weeks, months, even like a year sometimes. Where versus training, we have a tactile plan, even like planned out through the whole calendar year of how we're going to hit specific goals, reach certain adaptations, and stuff like that. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter if you're a CrossFitter, Ollie, powerlift, bodybuilder, sport athlete. There needs to be some type of training and programmed regiment. So, with your population, how do you approach like just programming and working out versus training?
We get a variety of people. We'll get people who will come in and they want an Olympic weightlift and start a program and ready to roll. And then we have people that come over from the CrossFit side because they want to improve their weightlifting technique, but they don't really want to buy into a program. They're like, well, can I come over and just lift a couple of times? And we're like, well, you can, but that's not really how you're going to get better. And it's tough for them to understand that just coming over, once or twice every few weeks or so and just dabbling in the lifts and getting a coach's eye on them isn't really enough to elicit a true technique change and provide any kind of progression. Whereas if they come in and take a break from CrossFit for about 6 weeks and even just go through our introductory program, they're going to see a lot more success because they're able to build on those lifts from week to week and continue to improve and get better rather than just trying one thing out, forgetting about it, and then coming back 2 weeks later and then trying something different. So there's a much more calculated plan involved. And that's, all based on, percentages and intensities, managing load, managing volume, the same way that you would with any other kind of program. The thing with Olympic weightlifting that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize when they first get started with it is that you're going to do the same exact movements 3, sometimes 4 weeks at a time. Whereas in a regular strength and conditioning program, you have a little bit more variability that you can play with in terms of, a bent row or a squat or a press. Whereas in weightlifting, we're specifically working on positional variation for 3 to 4 weeks in order to improve that technique.
And yeah, I mean, like what you said, it's a plan. Especially for someone that's wanting to compete. Again, you got to identify what's going on in each lift. And that kind of brings it back to, again, making sure they don't get hurt, making sure that, technique is sound. And then they're working on like, obviously the absolute strength speed strength, et cetera, et cetera. So on the other spectrum, Danny, like, how do you approach that with your guys?
The training versus working out component, like to touch on that first.
Yeah.
That to me is having a rental car versus owning a car. Like with working out, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. There's nothing like bigger than that next 40 minutes or 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So it becomes very impulsive. It becomes very emotionally driven, where now you're fluctuating the intensity or quality of your training based on how you feel versus what you need to do. And then I just think it creates more ambiguity across the board. But that's the crux of the problem of the general population or just the recreational enthusiasts,
Right.
Everything is always touch and go. There's no consistency. And you just see it as a task or a chore rather than a process or something that's just a part of what you do. And that's how I view training. So some delineations there are, addressing your nutrition, your hydration, and your sleep, preemptively thinking about, I have to train tomorrow. I have, a high intensity load tomorrow, high intensity day tomorrow, whatever the case may be. So when you look at it as training, it becomes more of just this adopted lifestyle that it's, again, a focal point and a priority for other variables in your life. So to now take it to that second part that you were talking about, the more and more that I do this shit, and especially with this population that I'm working with, the more and more I genuinely believe the biggest impact that we're making is that right there. It's just shifting the perspective or the paradigm of what training is or encompasses. It's not a mandatory thing because you ate too much fucking cheesecake over the weekend or like to have a scotch. It's not something that's to be done for the sake of extremism or punishment or, you know, this is just how I've always done it type of shit. And then it's also not this like task obedience thing that you are supposed to do, but even though you have elbow, ankle, and neck pain, you just continue to push through irrespective. When you look at it as a workout, it's singular. I'm going to the gym, I'm going to lift some weights, or I'm going to run on a treadmill. It's a very complete thought. Training is multifactorial, where now it's not just, and this is the shit that I get on her on a lot, it's not just that you are working out or exercising 4 to 5 times a week, and you may even be doing the right things, like all that being great. But if you're not backing that with the appropriate, you know, soft tissue work, mobility work, your, you know, again, your health and lifestyle and wellness factors, then you're missing the point. So I think that even though this is a debate of semantics or just, you know, verb preference or whatever, the training concept versus the workout concept, I think, is actually a really critical thing to be aware of, you know?
Right. Especially with like injury prevention, you know what I mean? Like, shoot, sometimes I'll hop into like an old, like commercial gym just to drop in, do something real quick. And then, you know, I see the same guys that I saw back when I started lifting, and they're doing the same exact shit, like same exact thing. And, you know,
I haven't even set foot in a commercial gym in half of a decade. That is amazing.
Yeah. And it's like the same lifts. It's almost like the same, dare I say, program. I don't even think there's a program, but, and like, you know, they got all the elbow sleeves on, every fucking belt you could think of, all these sleeves. I'm like, damn, dude.
Again, that to me just, it illustrates or represents the fact that it's a task obedience thing. It's a chore. Right. It's my doctor told me that if I don't start exercising 90 minutes, you know, every 3 days, whatever the recommendations are, you know, like, that I'm going to die at 52. So they're like, oh shit, well, I got to go to the gym and get on this stupid ass machine, you know, for 40 minutes so I don't die and leave my family with, you know, a boatload of debt. So I got to think about
and like, even, you know, for people who are late to the party and they hire, you know, like a strength coach to like handle programming, and they have like these, you know, things going on already, whether it's like a neck, shoulder, back. It's like now with training, you could, you know, like more effectively determine like what you had in your previous article, like what kind of loads are they going to do? Are they more conventional, non-conventional loading, like task or skill specific stuff, or are they going to be more on the like restorative or performance end? So then you can kind of accommodate for that and then effectively reach, you know, if it's a weight loss goal or hypertrophy goal, or, you know, just for sport.
I know you got something. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep.
No, it's okay.
But there are so many things with that. But the first couple being, you don't know what you don't know. So for most people, again, even the ones that are doing it, trying to do it right, you just don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. I can try to do my own taxes and be my own accountant, but
we'd be broke.
Right. Yeah. So, but in addition to that, you know, something that I mentioned to everybody is everybody in the world or within this capacity should have a coach. Like if I were in that position, I would absolutely seek out to work with a coach. It's just a matter of the relationship or again, like where you're at, what you got going on versus where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do down the road. There's a good and a bad relationship across the board. But nonetheless, the concept being like, this is not just something that you do to check off a box. And in today's world, there are so many resources out there that are available to you. I know of one at least that's all right. But in all seriousness, like, you know, we encourage people to find other resources that are just as redeemable or valuable. And I just don't think that there's an excuse anymore. You either prioritize it or you don't. It either really matters to you or it doesn't. And I think, honestly, Eric, of all people, is actually probably one of the best demonstrations of that, where that dude takes his shit serious.
Seriously, yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, shit, yeah, his back pain, like, virtually gone.
Yeah, but he's the type of guy. Like, I mean, I get it, no less than 5 or 6 texts a week of him doing, razor curls or Nordics or getting into some plyos or sprinting and shit. And like, there's so much of a part of me that because it's Eric, I'm like, God damn it, another. But then there's the other part of it that's like he's super jacked. He is genuinely fired up about that, and that does fire me up.
Yeah, and then when I think of like working out versus training in a general population sense, I always, not to bash CrossFit, but I think of CrossFit, it's like what Louis says, it's doing CrossFit doesn't make you a CrossFitter. It's practicing gymnastics, your ollie, your powerlifting, building your hypertrophy, and all that together makes you a CrossFitter. And then same thing with MMA. You just can't fight MMA and make you an MMA fighter. You got to practice the jiu-jitsu, the striking, the boxing, Muay Thai. All of that together makes you an MMA fighter. So that's still programming, in my opinion. Again, seeking out a coach.
It's certainly all controlled and outlined. It does put light on another part of that conversation. That is, there is good and bad programming, right?
Yeah.
Like you can have the right mindset. You can take all these things into consideration and perceive this as a training endeavor, and then just have bad programming, or again, it can't objectively just not be the right thing. So I think for the majority of this conversation and for the general population, that first step is really 80% of it. The good versus bad is something that you can start to get, more specific about as you go along. But for most people, it's really just about making the, concerted decision that this is going to be a part of your life, not just something that you're going to have to do to not die early. And then 2, being okay and comfortable with making an investment in this. This is it is your life, it is your health. And for those of you who are in good shape, but just, it's a way for those people to genuinely enjoy their training and have something that is, pragmatic, but it's also incentivizing and engaging. You can get excited about training. It shouldn't happen often that you feel stale or don't want to, you don't want to train.
No, and I feel like that's what a lot of people miss sometimes in like the general population setting, because they're like, well, I don't want to do a program because that's boring. It's the same thing over and over again. And I'll just go in and do, whatever I want because that switches it up. And
tell your kind of little anecdote on this too, though, right? Like about your compliance to your program. Mm-hmm. And then not knowing what to do when you couldn't do your program, and then it pivoting into you now getting into what's needed for you.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was as much as I didn't know what to do as I was stubborn and wanted to do what I wanted to do. But, I spent the better part of 4 months having like a small back issue and tweak and everything. And rather than, taking the time to not only warm up effectively and plan that into my training, rather than just following my program as it was written for Olympic weightlifting, rather than taking those extra measures and making it more of a lifestyle, I was just like, oh, it's fine. It's only 80% today. I don't really need to warm up, and just continue to, which, the coach in me is like, you're a fucking idiot, you know better, and you would never allow that for any of your athletes. But the athlete in me was like, I only have a little bit of time, so it's fine, and now I'm at a point where, I was doing well and like consistent with my Olympic weightlifting programs for a little bit, but it got to be too much on my back. So now I'm, redirecting to allow myself to train again and train smarter and in a much more healthy
And you're not
fashion.
Even a plug that you're doing remote?
Can you let me deal before you interrupt? Anyway, now to make myself healthier, I am following our Regrowth Remote program. And I feel great. I actually did the strength day on Monday, the conditioning day yesterday, and then today is Wednesdays are going to be my rest day, but I chose to do the hip mobility circuit that we have on the day 2 conditioning day during those rest days. So it's more of an active rest day for me. And then tomorrow will be my 3rd strength day. So I'm excited to see the process. And right away, I can already tell, because my body is doing different things and things that, it needs, and paying attention to some of those more finer movements. I'm already starting to feel better. So
there you go, programming. So yeah, I mean, and again, it could be repairing negative connotations towards training. But just kind of get in there, make it a lifestyle. And if you don't know how to approach that, you know where to go.